I was going to bring up the play-by-play if we go chronologically. So, but
All right, sounds good. Here we are.
let's
We'll
do
give
it.
it a we'll give it a second for folks to pile in here. Just maybe a minute or so, and then I'll start with the intro. All right. Awesome. Looks like we got a couple in here already. Hey, if you're tuning in, go ahead and give us a comment. Let us know. Let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from. All right, Grant, you ready?
I'm ready. We got the notification. Let's do it.
All right. It's a great day to be a coyote. Welcome, Coyote Nation, to another episode of Back to Pack Podcast, where we are going to be bringing you all your favorite games, memories, and of course, discussions with our fellow coyotes. As a disclaimer, we have no affiliation to the University of South Dakota. This is a podcast ran by fans for fans. The ideas and comments do not represent the university. Our opinions are our own. Be sure to find us on Twitter at BackThePackSD and join the USD Coyote Fans Nation page on Facebook. Last but not least, join the Howling Pack at www.goyotes.com. That being said, let's talk some football.
Mitch, how we doing?
Good evening, Grant. I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. Every time we jump in on Monday night, I get to talk about what a great Saturday we had. And we've been doing that pretty much all season here. So let's just do it again, right? You can
It's,
pretty much just put this whole thing on repeat. Just, oh, big Yote win. Happy Monday.
Man, yeah, we've had a bunch of opportunities. So big win, big D-Days win. I see we have a Yote fan already in here. And we'll talk about his score prediction here in a second.
Yeah, pretty good one.
Let's pin that up there. All right. So the Coyotes big win, big D-Days win, 42-17 over UNI. We talked about revenge being the theme this week, and I think it's safe to say that we got that revenge. Would have liked to obviously put up a 50 burger, but we didn't. We didn't think that was going to happen realistically, but obviously would have loved to see it. But nonetheless, a very convincing big win for us on D-Day. So that's going to be the theme tonight. We're going to go through kind of some miscellaneous stuff around the game, and then we'll talk about the game itself. So, with that being said, Grant, what's your first initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, another incredible game for both offense and defense. Another huge conference win that historically are not easy, but apparently this year are easy for this crew. So, um, we'll get into the game itself, but even prior to the game, a lot of positives, right? I know a lot of people headed
Yeah,
down the parade, my kids love the parade portion of it. So we hit the parade in the morning, came back into the tailgate. I think that's about as big a tailgate crowd as I've seen in quite some
yep,
time, which you expect on D days. But tons of people. Obviously, the success of the team drives a lot of that too. So he kind of got the perfect trifecta of great football team, great tailgate, great weather. It just makes for an awesome day. So that was good to see. Also, good to see that the big tailgate crowd did translate to a large game crowd, which I have behind me. This picture is actually a picture from the game Saturday. So somebody put on Twitter. So I threw it up here today. I think
yep.
the one I had before was just an empty dome. I'm like, that doesn't feel right. I should probably update that. So
Yeah.
I grabbed this from Twitter, and to your point, I think I don't know what the official tally was. It was 80, 8,900, 89,
89-30.
8934.
Yep.
So I don't know if there were, 9,000 cheeks in the seats that we've talked about before, but nonetheless, the atmosphere was fantastic.
Right.
Crowd definitely played a factor, especially early in the game.
Yeah, for sure. I want to go back just 1 second about the weather. So a lot of people that know me know that I'm a weather guy. You
Yeah.
couldn't have asked for a better day in
Mhm.
October for D-Days. We've had some real stinkers over the years,
Oh yeah.
either cold or raining, and that was just about picture perfect. So that started off with the good vibes. You talked about the parade too, so we took my little girl to the parade as well. That's kind of her favorite, to see Charlie, get candy, all that stuff. So had a blast with that, and then went over to tailgate. And at tailgate, man, I tell you what, we saw. Shout out to the folks that we had with us on the last episode, but the hold it up here, that 19 Brewing, right? So we had
Yeah.
them on the pregame episode, and got to do the live taste test of their new Coyote Legacy beer, and I saw a lot of folks carrying around these pint cans here on at the tailgate. So I don't know if you saw the same, but definitely some people stopped in there and tried it.
Yes, I was keeping an eye out for it specifically because of our preview show. It was all over tailgate. I think
Yeah.
people clearly, whether it was, I'm not saying it was us necessarily, I'm sure it didn't hurt, but there was back to pack or people definitely caught wind of it and there was a lot of it. So I unfortunately don't have any cans left to hold up like Mitch. Mine somehow disappeared on Saturday. I don't know how that happened. It's just how that goes, I guess, tailgate. But no, I saw a lot of red cans, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. And based on their social media pictures and posts that they put up, it looked like they had a pretty good turnout. So, shout out to them. Oh, what a great kind of upstart for USD and the launch of that product. So, kudos to them at
Absolutely.
19 Brewing. And then talking about some other tailgate news, how about the Jelly shots that
Yeah,
that Jake was selling on our behalf back to pack? So he made $500 selling. I don't know if he sold. Did he sell all 88? I guess I didn't hear, but I know he
I
was
believe he
close.
did. I believe he
Okay.
did because our crew bought some and it was pretty. He was at the bottom of the bag, but at that point, so I'm certain because he
All
was like
right.
making another lap, so I'm certain he got rid of them all.
All right. So $500 raised for Alex's lemonade stand. And again,
Mhm.
that's that Childhood Cancer Research Foundation. Aiden is USD's representative, and that is also a partnership with Northwestern Mutual. So shout out to them. FCS Nation Radio, they have a podcast. They actually kind of help pump that, advertise it, and we're more than happy to help from a USD perspective from on Aiden's behalf to help raise that money. So after this weekend, I think between us, Back to Pack, the 500, and a couple other miscellaneous donations, and then the Howling podcast, our friends over there, Mark, Chad, and Jordan, I think they raised $64. So all that being said, Aiden is now in second place in that
Love that.
standing. So he's at like 1350 ish raise.
Nice.
So yeah, we moved him up from fourth to second over the weekend. So awesome job by Coyote Nation, and just shout out to those that are supporting the cause and buying those Jelliot shots from us. So couldn't be more happy with that.
Yeah, and then we'll of course get into the game, but Aiden, he must have really liked that because then he just decided to be an absolute surgeon out on the football field, particularly in the second or in the first half of the game, where, like I said, we'll get into it, but I believe there was a point in the game where he was 12 for 12 at one point. So that
That's
was
right.
incredible to see. I think that's probably some of the best football that Aiden's played, particularly in that first quarter. And I think Bob mentioned it today on one of the pressers, or excuse me, yesterday on one of his pressers as well. So
He actually did, yeah. So he mentioned that in his post game press conference, and then he mentioned it today in the media press conference that he thought that was the best game and best half that Aiden has played in his career as a Coyote. So, and I would agree because I think you had mentioned it 12 of 12. I remember seeing that he was 10 for 10. So wouldn't be surprised that he was 12 for 12, but I think he finished, oh gosh, it was pretty close to perfect. Yeah, here it is, 17 of 20 for
mhm.
284 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, you talk about efficiency. I mean, he couldn't miss.
No, and I mean, that's always been his game is efficiency, right? Like I always, whenever I describe that to folks who maybe don't follow Cow football as much as I do, um, you know, we'll never ask him to throw the ball 45 times. It's just not how this offense operates. It's never how we've
Right,
operated.
right.
Um, but the efficiency is just always something insane. He's always takes care of the football, always super efficient with it. And yeah, to Bob's point, I think uh, I'm trying to think of a better game. I think this might be certainly one of the most efficient, but just overall one of the best games, and took command early as
For,
well.
for sure. So final score 42-17. I got to go back and we got to talk about our predictions real quick.
Oh yeah.
The The initial betting line that came out was like around 34 points, right? We talked about that last week. So
Hmm.
the ESPN bet spread right before kickoff, I think they drop it Saturday morning or sometime around 11, actually dropped to 21 and a half right before kickoff. So a lot of money came in on the UNI side there. But we did cover either way. We covered the spread there, won by 25. So give us your nugget that you mentioned to me about the covering the spreads.
Yeah, yeah. So the old adage of good teams win and great teams cover. That spread cover this week puts the Yotes at 6-0 against the spread this year, which is incredible. So just indicative to, you talk about teams that are overachieving, underachieving. We're talking about a team that was really good last year with high expectations this year, overachieving on those high expectations. So
Right.
you just don't see that very often, regardless. Vegas doesn't like to let one team get too lopsided one way or the other. So just more proof of how incredible this team's playing right now.
Exactly. So a couple things here. We'll talk about our predictions. So Jake had 38-0. Obviously, we didn't pitch the shutout there. And actually, while we're talking about Jake, shout out to him. He's not with us tonight because he's actually celebrating his birthday. So,
Yes, that's right. Happy birthday,
yep.
Jake.
Yep. Happy birthday, Jake. Wish you were here, but understand why you're not. So he was 38-0. Obviously, he was a little bit off there. You had 31-3.
Hmm.
You were thinking the same thing kind of I was. I was 34-7. Again, I was close, but not there. Katie, one of the owners of 19 Brew, she had 33-6. She was again similar to me. And then Ed, one of the other owners, he was close. He predicted 42-6.
Hmm.
That's not too far off. He got our total right. Only missed theirs by 11. So I think Yote fan, if I remember right, Yote fan guessed 45-17.
That's
He
about
if
as
he's
close as you can get.
if he's still in here, we'll see if he comments. But I think that was his guess was 45-17 if I remember right. So he would have been the closest that I recall seeing, at least from our show.
Yeah, he was looking for redemption after the score prediction from the week before, and he nailed it.
Yeah, exactly. We've been giving him a hard time, but
That's
I
right.
think he totally redeemed himself here on D-Day. So shout out Yoke fan. We talked about the crowd already. Let's get into the game. So
Yeah, yeah.
the game uh, doesn't really start the way we want it to. Obviously, we kick to them and they go down the field in a hurry. I think it was 2.5 minutes. One big play. We got beat deep on a simple post pattern for 49 yards, and that was the chunk of that drive. Um, Not ideal. They punch the ball into the end zone and go up 7-0. Real quick on us. What were your thoughts there at that point?
Yeah, it was, I mean, a little shocking, right? Really, it was really just two chunk plays that
Mm-hmm.
made up the drive, right? It was a, big 50-yarder and then one that was, I think, a 23-yarder. Outside of that, they're really, very short runs, but obviously, um, I guess the initial thought was, and I guess it took me a second to really even realize it, but we did not see the quarterback start in the game that had seen previous weeks, right? So,
That's
uh,
correct.
and it sounds like based off the post game, you and I was pretty happy. I believe I think it's Sheckelman. I don't know if I'm saying
Yep.
that right, but
Yep.
yeah, I mean, he came in and was ready to play, threw the ball well. So I was telling Mitch before we went live here, but my 7-year-old daughter, she gave a synopsis of the game. I said, "Hey, what should I mention tonight about the game?" And she said, "Well, that purple team, they scored right away really fast, but Coyotes just didn't care." So
Right.
that,
Right.
that's the good news, right? Is that yes, they did score in a hurry, but that was the one thing that was good to see. Actually, I kind of liked seeing us get behind not in the time, right? Hindsight
Right.
now, get
Right.
behind the ball. The team was completely unfazed by that. Like the defense didn't look rattled. The offense was not like nobody even flinched from the
Right.
USD sideline after that. Whereas the crowd, we're kind of going, "Ooh, I don't like to see that. That
I
was awfully quick, right?"
I was honestly nervous, and a little PTSD was kicking in at that point. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, just to see, and honestly, kudos to you. And I don't know if if our team, if our defense knew that that backup quarterback was going to play.
Mhm.
We had not seen him prior to this point in the season, so I'm not sure that they really even knew that was coming, to be honest with you. So that factors in, right? Just not having anything on this guy, no film to look at. Um, so that obviously part of it, but I think that they said they punched, they threw the first punch, and we punched right back, and that just set the tone for the rest of the game. Uh, to go down, march right down the field. And I think you had the play-by-play. How quickly did it take us to score when we answered
Yeah,
back? It couldn't have been too long.
no, it really didn't. It only took us 5 minutes. We did it in
Yeah,
8 plays, 75 yards, a little bit more plays run, but of course, Galbraith was the star of that drive. Obviously, capping it off with that hurdle touchdown. That's been all over Twitter. If you're on Twitter or follow that, that was when it's all over and happened right in front of the students in our section where we're at, and
yeah,
just erupted on that side when he hurdled that guy. So not only was it good to just kind of march down the field and do it that way, but then to end it with an explosive,
yeah.
we were saying top 10 play, type
Right.
situation over there. That just got things really sparked, it felt like.
So I've not been shy of saying that he's my favorite player, right? And
Right.
so right off the bat, so that I don't know if it was the first or second play from scrimmage, but they put him instead of in the traditional tight end spot on the line of scrimmage, they actually had him split out as the inside wide receiver. He wasn't, the far guy on the sideline, but he was inside wide receiver, and he went right
Mhm.
up the seam and was wide open, for a big gain. And then a couple plays later, they hit him on the crosser, and then he does the rest with the running and then hurdling the guy at like the 5 yard line in front of the student
Mhm.
section, like you said. That was absolutely huge. To come down and answer like that, the crowd went nuts. And then from there it was game on. So I don't
Yeah, it
think we
really.
need to. I don't think we need to recap like the rest of the play by play. But what else stands out to you, kind of in the first half? Let's take it by halves.
Yeah, in the first half, I think, like you said, we won't go through every, play by play, but I guess a lot of momentum for USD after that drive, and then UNI actually responded with a pretty well put together drive for the most part. Although I will gripe about the pass interference call
Mm-hmm.
on that drive that I think everyone it happened right in front of us. We all agreed that it was a tipped ball. The refs didn't think that, but that would have ended the drive. Instead, it extended it. They got into field goal range and kicked the field goal. But I mean, after that, five more touchdowns in a row for this UST offense. That's just unstoppable, right? I don't think we didn't put a foot to a ball until fourth quarter when we finally had to punt. But
Yep.
you really start to that field goal stop felt like a in the moment it was like, okay, good, we stopped him to held him to three here, and then
Right.
after that it really just took a turn where we just dominated kind of the rest of the way. And again, mostly, we kind of did a little bit, but I think Bauman was kind of the star of the first half. He was just absolutely surgical. Didn't miss. Went 10 for 10. I think going into halftime. And I think it went. I thought it got to 12 to 12. I have to go back and look. But to your point,
Mm-hmm.
regardless, he was kind of the star in the first half, in my opinion.
100%. And one of the plays that happened right in front of me, in section H there is the Tice wheel route. Um, just
Oh yeah,
literally the most beautiful pass that I've probably ever seen him throw. I mean,
yeah,
just a rainbow dot, just dropped it in the bucket right on the sideline. Didn't have to slow down. He's full sprint, hits him inside, and from there he just runs, as fast as he can down the sideline and dives from the 4 yard line.
yes,
You know,
huge dive.
and
Yeah.
I'm signaling touchdown, as he's at the 10 yard line, because I'm like, oh, he's gonna beat these guys. But the safety or the corner that was chasing him down had a good angle, did get his arms on him, but he dove from the 4 yard line and he was not gonna be stopped.
Right, right. Yeah, that is one thing that I love about Bauman's game. I should say two things. One, I'm a lefty, so I love a lefty quarterback. So
All right.
that always starts it for me. But he has such good touch when it comes to throwing the ball. I think we've had quarterbacks in the past that have had kind of that more huge rocket arm. I think of like a Simmons, and even Camp at times would show kind of an arm, but never had the touch like Bauman has, where he has the ability to put on a spot. We saw
Right.
another pass in the UNI game where he actually threw it, and I thought he threw it into traffic, but actually was able to thread the needle between two defenders. Perfect pass right to the wide receiver. So kind of went over the
Yep.
linebacker's head, but also kept it short of the safety. So that those plays get me excited because he takes care of the ball, and he's got it probably some of the best touch I've seen of any quarterback we've had in a long, long time.
Right. So they did. So we talked about 7-7. They go down, get a field goal.
Hmm.
And you were talking about that pass interference call that actually led to that field goal. So it was
Yep.
10-7, and then we answer right back with that Tice touchdown. So it makes it 14-7 or
Yep.
14-10, excuse me. From there, we scored, like we already mentioned, 6 touchdowns on 6 consecutive, possessions. We didn't punt till the fourth quarter. So we just kept scoring over and over again. And that's something that, we're starting to see this season. We're starting to see that consistency on offense where these last 3-4 games, nobody can stop us, and we have been talking about that on this show for really since the beginning of the season. We wanted to see more balance, and my
Hmm.
goodness, are we seeing it now?
The the surprising thing, and Bob talked about it a little bit in the presser, either yesterday or today, but there are so many high quality skill position players on this team that
Yep.
there's so many different guys that can get involved. He was even laughing that you have newcomer of the week, um, Adams last week,
Right.
who doesn't have a catch this week, and not
Right.
because we not because he's not out there, but there's so many different people that were making plays that there's I don't know what you do as a defensive coordinator on the other side. Like, where do you sell out, right? Because if you sell out on the
Right.
run, you're going to have the result that you saw. Because you and I did, they tried to sell out on the run to a
Oh
certain
yeah,
extent,
for sure.
which we talked about that, right? That's the
Yep.
strategy if you're you and I sell out on the run and hope that Bauman has an awful game, right? Or
Right. Right.
it it's just, but chance of that happening are so slim, right? But that's really the only option you have because you can't let them run on you. That
Yeah.
that formula is, of course, that's the worst case scenario. So it gets worse and worse, it seems like, for defensive coordinators to figure out who are we going to try to stop because there's not a lot of good answers.
Yeah, and so kind of a nugget that I found really interesting from this game was we had 9 different people catch the ball, and
Yes.
we
Hmm.
had 6 different guys rush the ball.
Hmm.
And I know Tice went out. We didn't see him in the second half, but still, I mean, that's you want to talk about weapons. Every single guy that touched the ball on Saturday produced.
Yeah.
I think I was looking at the stats earlier, and we were basically, I mean, every single guy that rushed was over 5 yards a carry. We
Hmm.
had Charles Pierre had 21 for 105. He was right at 5 yards a carry. LJ Phillips was 14 yards a carry. Tice, before he went out, was 6.3 yards a carry. Keandre Jones Logan only had 1 rush for 11. Even Carter Bell, 2 for 11. That's 5.5 average. And Aiden had one rush for 8 yards. And that's against UNI's supposed good rush defense. They were rated
Yeah.
22 in the FCS, compared to
Hmm.
us being 16 in rushing defense. So very similar in terms of being a good rushing defense. And we still ran it down their throat in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, I mean that's the crazy part too, is that the traditional, we've seen it with the power run and the sweeps and things like that. But to your point too about creativity, you talk about Keandre Jones Logan's a perfect example of a guy that we're going to get involved in the run game in certain plays, and I don't want to call them trick plays, but maybe just kind of nuanced plays. We saw him get involved on the punt return, which I think had
Oh,
everybody just
man.
going crazy on the lateral pass, if you will, to him. And so, yeah, now you talk about a defensive coordinator that's having nightmares, a special team coordinator that's having nightmares. We saw Tyson Jones Logan switching. I don't know if you noticed that on the kickoff. They were
Yes,
kind of
I
going
did.
back and forth
Yep.
before the kickoff. So it's trying to test the kickers a little bit on that as well. So, but it's fun. When you have that many playmakers, you have to find ways to get everybody involved. And I think, I think Josh is doing a great job of that right now.
And that's the creativity on special teams. That's something that, as a Coyote fan, I don't know that we've really seen, in recent memory. So that's fantastic. That really actually took me by surprise. In fact, you're talking about the punt return. I didn't even see KJL anywhere on the. I mean, I don't know if I just missed him. I don't know. Was he laying down on the turf or something? I don't know, but I didn't even know he was out there.
Yeah, it happened right in front of us, and he was even the lateral even happened to our sideline. And still like you said, prior to it happening, didn't even look up there. So I'm sure we weren't alone in that, right? I don't know how many people, if they had him down on the line and a hand in the dirt. I guess I'd have to go back and look and see. But you're right, the disguise was on.
Right, right. And we could, you and I talked about the refs online offline. We could sit here and talk about how horrid the officiating is. We could do a whole show just on that. I don't think we need to go into that, but that play specifically, just the way that that was called, announced, reviewed, the whole process there was just goofy. This whole kind of game was really just not well officiated. UNI ended the game with 0 penalties, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I'll let you talk for a second. But that's all I'm going to say on the penalties. It was quite the game.
Yeah, to your point, you could spend a whole show talking about that, but without spending too much time in it, right? The backwards pass punt, they made some strange call about how it had already been reviewed, and they're
Yep.
going to review it, and we had some spots, just ball spot errors, in my opinion, that we saw that you know didn't get measured, didn't get looked, So yeah, the officiating crew. I hate to say this, like I think it just was like it seemed like an inexperienced crew,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Like it just didn't seem like anybody had a lot of confidence to make calls. I know there's a couple on the
Right.
sidelines where both refs run over and they both just stared at each other. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure what was going on with that crew. Luckily, it was a game where the penalties weren't significant to the results, so not a
Correct.
huge deal. But yeah, that definitely some noteworthy ones we were cranky about at times.
Let's while we're kind of just talking about some random things about the game, let's do injuries real quick. So we came out of this game with a few. We saw guys go out and come back, during the game, but we also had a couple guys go out that didn't come back.
Hmm.
So what can you tell us about some of those injuries? Let's start with Aiden, QB1.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of insight really on them than what the comments Bob made about it. In Based off his comments, I don't think Bob was too concerned. We also know Bob is not one to show his cards in any situation, so that may not be a very good analysis on my part. But I think he mentioned something about being very cautious or precautionary on them. So my
Yeah,
hope is, I say Bauman was over with the band doing the cheer at the end. I don't think anything. I think he just sounded like he just got the wind knocked out of him
that's
on that
that's
one.
that's right.
But
Actually they asked him that. Media asked Bauman that in the post game press conference, and he just said it was a football play. I got the wind
yeah.
knocked out of me. I'm good. So
Hmm.
as far as he goes, nothing major there. How about Tice? We saw him go out in the first half and did not come back in the second half.
Yeah, kind of the same deal. I guess I didn't hear anything substantial. I saw him again. They come over by the student section where we sit. We're in section D as well, and he had a boot on, but he seemed to be having a pretty good time with everybody. So that again makes me think maybe precautionary, but hopefully nothing like an ankle injury or anything like that. So um, I don't think I don't have a lot of concerns there. I feel like we would have maybe heard a little bit more if it was something serious, but
Right, right,
makes me think probably not.
right. So on him, I think again, we don't have any inside sources or anything like that, but I think on him, I think it's a bruised shin. I don't think there's anything broken, nothing sprained. I literally think, like you mentioned, the trainers in this game our trainers were being ultra conservative with players. And so I think that was the deal there. I think he's just got, a nice big bruise on that leg. So I think on that lower leg. So I think he's all right. Um, Mike Reed, another one, cornerback, stud on the defense. He went down. I don't know exactly when he went down, but it was fairly early in the first half, and never came back. So, and again, no, I have no information on him. I don't know if you have anything on him.
I don't, kind of the same thing. That was the one
All
I
right.
saw. I don't remember seeing him leave. I don't remember the exact
Yeah.
when he left. I didn't see him return, so I don't know much about that one as well. But um, I think there's a host of some others that maybe left but also came back, which, that's football in October, November, right? You're going to
Right.
have some of those. So overall, I think we're in pretty good shape, all things considered, unless something changes this week that we find out. But
Right.
again, we probably won't. That's kind of the MO of Bob. He doesn't
He's,
typically
no,
like to share a lot of that info, which I get it.
no.
That's a competitive advantage for another team to get something like that. So
Right. And you saw Hayden Erickson go down. He actually got rolled up on the Tice Wildcat touchdown run. He was lead blocking there on the edge,
yes,
and he got rolled up on in the pile as Tice kind of fell into the end zone in the pile. Um, he came back with a wrap on his knee. Don't think that's anything too serious, but it looked honestly, it looked kind of bad. It looked like one of those where your knee is done for. Just the way he got rolled up on the back and just went down grabbing that knee. But he did come back and actually played well even after that injury. So and then Gary Bryant, we saw him go out, and he actually did come back too. I'm not even sure what his injury was, but I think
yes.
he actually got hurt. Did he get hurt, go out, and come back and get that interception right before halftime?
Um, I that could be. Yeah, I'm not sure on the timing on that one, but the one thing that is interesting, speaking of injuries, this is really the first game we've had any
Right.
talk of injuries, which is like
Yeah.
unusual. And we kind of had to your point, kind of a, a pile of names kind of stack up, although I don't think anything serious. So,
Right.
we've seen the SIUs and the Idahos and some of the folks around the country that have dealt with some horrific injury, luck. And so we've been pretty lucky to this point.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think for the most part, I think I didn't hear anything of significance that have come up from any of those other ones that you mentioned. So, but
Agreed.
but speaking of Gary Bryant, I mean, shifting gears back to the game a little bit. Shout out to him for Missouri Valley Defensive Player of the Week.
Yeah.
Well earned, obviously.
Oh my goodness. So we've been talking about him on this show for several weeks now, and he's
Hmm.
a young guy. We lost a lot of talent last year in that linebacking core to the NFL, and we had a lot of question marks coming into the season with that linebacking group, and he has stood tall and really stepped up. I think he's a sophomore.
Yes, as I say, I believe that's right, and you're exactly right. Looking for some folks to step up in the absence of, that's definitely the part of the team coming into the season we had the biggest question marks about because there's so many new faces. So,
Right,
uh,
and young guys too.
yes, right, yeah, not only new but young guys that were going to be stepping up. So, uh, the good news for those guys, and they'd be the first to tell you, is that experience up front certainly leads to a lot of their success too, right? That they get from the front four, but I mean the the game he had, he was all over the field. I'd have to look at how many tackles it was. I'd certainly double digits, but that interception that he had, we talk about forced turnovers versus just a turnover.
Yep.
That's a textbook forced turnover, right? A ball that probably should have been caught by the wide receiver, but Bryant just took it away, right? It was one where he decided that was his ball, and to me, that was actually a huge turning point in the game. Right before halftime, they were kind of driving a little bit. I mean, they weren't, we weren't in the red zone or by any means, but to get that stop there, and then knowing that we get the ball to
At the
start
second half, yeah.
to the second
Yeah.
half,
Yeah.
we kind of looked around and said, "Hey, if we score, we score that first drive coming out of the second half, UNI that might do it." And to that point, that's really where I felt the game ended, to be honest. It sounds, silly to say that, but after we scored that touchdown coming out of halftime, went up 35-10, or excuse me, yeah, 35-10, I believe it was.
Mhm.
That's where I felt like the game was over. Which again, I feel like we've said that over and over and over again the last 3-4 weeks about games basically being out of reach in the third quarter. This one was, 4 minutes, 5 minutes into the third quarter, but really that's where I felt like, okay, this game's over. 25 points with this defense, not happening.
So from a fan's perspective, I was the most hyped in this game right before half. And the two, honestly, like you mentioned it being over at that point, the two biggest series were when they were driving. It was 21-10. They were driving. They just had crossed midfield. They went for it on 4th and 1, and we strung it out to the sideline
Yes.
and tackled them for a loss. So it was turnover on downs. As soon as that happens, we go down 4 plays later and score a touchdown, go up 28-10, and then they turn around and drive the ball. They were just outside the red zone, like you mentioned, and that's when Gary Bryant picks it off. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that at that point it was 21-10. They were, coming in to score, and we keep them out on turnover on downs. That's obviously turnover, and then go down score. They come right back, working on scoring again, and we intercept it. At that point, the game was over in my mind. To keep them off the board, they were this team. We talked about it coming in. They were desperate. Their
Yeah.
season was pretty much on the line at this point. And so we knew they were going to, obviously play tough, which UNI is a big physical team, and then they
Hmm.
play hard. Um, and just kind of everything that goes into this game. I At that point I was just like, okay, we're in full control, and this game is basically over. So, really, really happy. And as far as how defense started the game, giving up the 10 quick points, and then to end the first half that way by keeping points off the board on 2 consecutive series. Absolutely huge, game changing play, and really just locked it down from there, and it was game over.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That was really the only concern we had going into this game, is that UNI was desperate, right? Like a loss. I mean, that ended their season for all
Right.
intents and purposes, right? So knowing a desperate team back against their wall, or backs against the wall, excuse me, and I should say we saw that with one touchdown they scored in the second half was the slowest developing flea flicker I've ever witnessed,
Oh
uh,
man.
where they did score a touchdown on that one. So
Right.
I don't take a lot of stock in that, to be honest. Like I said, I think actually because it was so slow developing, I mean, the running back had the ball for what felt like 3 seconds before he finally pitched it back. That's just a play that is what it is, and I don't think you take a lot of stock in it. But those are the types of plays that desperate teams are trying to pull off. At that point, it was out of reach, I think. Uh, but yeah, they were a desperate team, and unfortunately for them, they're just too much to overcome.
Yeah, and that play specifically looked like it was happening in slow motion.
It
I
really
mean,
did.
I mean, the running back just ate the ball and just kind of hid behind the lineman. I mean, they did a good job. That good play call, good execution on their part. We bit hard
Hmm.
on that run. Tevin McKelvey was matched up against the receiver who ended up catching that pass. He kind of faked like he was blocking, and then released over his head. And the safety Josiah Gaines on that side bit so hard he came downhill just running a million miles an hour, ready to
Hmm.
make the tackle on that big running back. And all of a sudden the ball's going over everybody's head, and the receiver was wide open. So
Right.
kudos to them. Good play on their part. But if that's what it takes to score on our defense, I mean, I can live with that if you give up one of
Yeah.
those. One of those a game in desperation mode for a team that's already desperate, and you're down. What was it, like 35-10 at that point? And then they
It
score
was.
one
Yeah.
to cut it to 35-17. The game still wasn't, in question at that point.
Yeah, it didn't. It was a non-factor at that point, but to your point, it's what desperate teams do. So, um,
I'm only
but no,
upset that it allowed Ken to get the score prediction the closest, because I told him, and I also told Joel Strecker on Facebook that who also predicted 16 or 17 points, and I said no way, they won't score that many.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. I was on you. Yeah, you heard me. I had to apologize after Murray State, thinking they were going to give up points, and yeah, I thought 17 was too much too. But you love the result regardless, right? So
right,
the
right, we
but
can't complain.
no, no, not at all. I would say another play of note. We're getting into the second half, and I feel bad. I don't want to discount some of the great plays that were made in the second half, but this team just gets out to such big, big
Big
leads that
leads.
a lot of time the fourth quarter is,
Snooze
third
fest.
is a snooze fest. But
Oh,
the play by Cremasoli
oh man.
was another electric one too, right? And talk about just a great play call. We've seen other teams run it, and actually Wisconsin, if you remember that game, they ran a similar type play that they scored about a 50-yard touchdown on us.
Yep.
out at Wisconsin. We were talking about that. So again, another fun play that Cremasoli gets to come in there and contribute and shows us one that he's a hell of an athlete, right? I mean, they
Yep.
showed the run. I think everyone in the building thought he was going to run it, and he went, "Oh, just kidding. Here we go." So that was a fun play to see him get involved with too.
So here's my thoughts on that. Josh Davis, OC, who's now in his second season here with us,
Mm-hmm.
former Jack's wide receiver, by the way, and coach up there. Um, he's in his bag right now. Like
Yeah.
he's to the point with this offense, which I am so darn glad to see this at this point. He is layering plays from game to game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I mean by that is last game against Murray State, Nevin ran that. So we ran that same play, and he runs for the 75-yard or so touchdown, right?
Yeah.
In this game, he fakes that run. He looks like he's going to run. He's got that ball tucked, and he's running full sprint toward the sideline, and at the last second pulls up, and you got a wide open A.J. Coons running down the sideline, and he throws a perfect pass. Nice catch around the sideline, kind of tiptoeing the sideline, and right down the sideline for a touchdown. So for me, that's kind of the next step that in this offense that we want to see, because you're setting up teams from week to week because they're going to see that on tape. And now you're throwing in another wrinkle off of those same plays. And that's why the RPO is so deadly too, by the way. I love to see it, man. As a fan, we're really kind of hitting our stride at this point. And shout out to Josh Davis, because he's really in his bag of tricks at this point.
Yeah, again, it comes back to so many playmakers. You bring up, AJ Coons, who's a guy who's not historically getting involved frequently, so that adds even another layer to a guy that maybe he's not
Mhm.
highlighted on the scouting report, but now streaking down the sideline for a touchdown. As the backup quarterback throws it to him. So a lot of talent out there, and to your point, pretty deep in the bag of tricks, which is good too.
So speaking of AJ Coons, he actually was tied for the leading receiver of the game. Him and JJ both had 61 yards and each had a touchdown.
Hmm.
That AJ Coons touchdown was 37 yards, so he had one of the longer catches of the day as well. So definitely his biggest day as a Yote. That was also his first touchdown as a Coyote, because he came from
Hmm.
Western Illinois, transfer in the offseason. And that was also, this is a good tidbit, that was Nevin's first pass as a Coyote, and went for a touchdown.
Like that. Let's see, I know I shouldn't say maybe it wasn't his first run. I was going to say week before you do a 75-yard touchdown run, you followed up with a 1-for-1 with a touchdown.
That's,
It's a great start.
that's pretty darn good, man. I don't know how much better you can draw it up.
No, no, I agree with you. I agree with you for sure.
So that was a nice little fun, series in the game as well, man. And so I'm just looking forward to seeing more of that. Plays building off of plays, and setting teams up week to week as they see that stuff on tape, and then being able to, take it to another level, throw in another wrinkle, and beat them as they're selling out to stop, said play. So outside of that, other news and notes that I have from the game, Tice, with his effort, I don't think he didn't have too many yards in this game, but yeah, he only had 6 for 38 rushing before he went out, but he went over 3,000
Yes.
as a coyote, and he's now the third coyote in history to have over 3,000 rushing yards. So wow,
Yeah,
kudos to him.
I was gonna say yeah, definitely, obviously will be going down as one of the best running backs in USD history with those kinds of
Yeah.
numbers, and the way he's done it, it's couldn't happen to a better guy as well. So uh, really good to see that. I think I did see that before the game. He was like 29 yards short or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was telling people, I said, hey, get in the building quick. You'd hate to miss it because it happened in the first series. The way we've been running the ball, right? So
Right.
so that was
Right.
really cool. That was really cool to see for sure. So
Oh man. So Grandpa Tice. So anybody who interacts with us or Travis himself on social media, we're calling him Grandpa Tice, by the way, because this is what his 6th year in college.
yeah.
So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what we like to see, though. Yeah, we like to rack up those yards, and here
Oh
he is in
man.
year 6, and he might be running the ball the best of his career, in my opinion.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, and that's no knock on what he's done prior either. I mean, he just gets better and
No,
better every year. So
exactly,
pretty
exactly.
sweet to see.
Yeah.
All right, how about
I was gonna
anything
say,
else? Anything else on the defense, or what do you got?
No, no, I was gonna say I didn't have too much other than I don't know if we wanted to shift over to giving the game balls. I know we're running kind of long here tonight, but we'll should we switch over to just giving game balls on offense, defense? I don't know if you had a chance to pick
Yeah,
some, but
yeah,
um,
yeah. Go ahead.
there's
I'll let you
there
go first,
there's
and then
some
I'll.
wildly obvious choices, and maybe I've already spoiled both of mine, uh, but yeah, I can go first.
Go ahead.
You want me to do both, or do you want me to do? We'll do back and forth. We'll do offense first.
All right.
So I already gushed about him all show, but Bauman, is my game ball for offense. Like we said, I agree with Bob. I think that was one of his best, maybe his best game of his career. Uh, the first half when he came out, the way he was throwing it, putting it on spots, that's probably one of the best I've ever seen live for a quarterback. So pretty obvious choice. There's plenty of candidates. Don't get me wrong, but I got to give it to Bauman after the comments I made so far.
All right. No, you can't go wrong with that. He's like we said, he's probably played his best game as a Coyote, and especially that first half was probably his best half that we've ever seen. So,
Hmm.
can't argue with that. I'm gonna go as much as I want to go JJ because he's my favorite player. I'm gonna that's where I would go, but I'm gonna actually go the entire offensive line, and I'm gonna include JJ and Hayden Erickson, the other tight end, in that group.
All right.
And shoot, let's throw in Jack Martins too because he's a wide receiver that's not getting the ball, but he is out there on the edge blocking. So I'm going to give my offensive game balls going to everybody who's blocking because we talked about in this game, UNI's good run defense, and we still rushed the ball. I don't even know how many
Hmm.
total yards we had, but it had to be what 200. No, oh, just shy
100, yeah,
190.
192.
Okay, yeah, my
Hmm.
guess was 200.
Hmm.
Um, you know, we didn't know if we were going to have that much success running the ball. So shout out to all the big boys up front, and the tight ends who are out there blocking on the edges. Can't say enough about them and what they've done this entire season because none of this is possible without them. So this offense goes as the offensive line goes. So that's my offensive game ball.
Yeah, and that's funny you say that. That's another broken record type accolade for us, but it's well deserved every week. I mean, that's where it all starts. So, but should we switch to defense?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. I feel bad, but I was gosh, the play happened right in front of me. It's again such an obvious choice, but Gary Bryant, obviously the Missouri Valley agrees with me, right?
Yep,
He was
yep.
the defensive player of the game. Had the pick. I'd have to look up. I've meant to look up how many tackles he ended up with on the day.
It was
Um,
10 or
I
11,
want to
but he
say it was
also had
11.
but he had a tackle for loss as well in there.
Yeah, yeah. So uh, that's the game ball for me. Again, I think he would be the first one to give some credit to the guys up front for uh, helping get to those tackles, but that interception was such a great play at such a pivotal moment of the game too, right? Like you and I said, it kind of felt like that really ended the game. So got to be Gary Bryant today.
Man, so you went the quarterback of the actual quarterback of the offense, and then you went the middle linebacker who's the quarterback of the defense. So
Right, right.
I'm gonna go. So since you did that, I'm gonna go defensive line. I'm gonna say the entire defensive line because again, none of this is possible without them. They didn't get as much pressure as I would have liked to see, but we also didn't blitz as much either. But Blake Holden, we saw him a couple times impact the play, and in fact, I think it was him that was just about there on the Gary Bryant interception. I think he had a good push up the middle on that play specifically. And I had mentioned in the pregame show last week that I thought Nick Gase was going to have a good game because their offensive line wasn't that good.
Hmm.
He didn't get a sack until the fourth quarter, but those guys up front, they impacted the game. They stopped the run for the most part. They only allowed the one rushing touchdown to the big running back, and that was it was a 1 yard carry. After
Hmm.
that quick first drive they had with the deep passes. So I'm going to say the defensive line, and that's just because those guys up there have been battling all season too. And, I don't think they get enough credit because it really starts up front as well on the defense. So I'm going to go the entire defensive line, and I'm going to say the secondary kind of disappointed me in this game. If I had to go one negative, it would be the secondary. And I know the defensive line complements them a little bit. They got to get the pressure to help the secondary out. They have to work in tandem there, but secondary got beat. Balls went over their head in this game, and so my one negative If I had to pick a negative from this game, that would be it.
Yeah, I agree with you as well on that. I think there's some good film to be looked at from the DB's perspective. Obviously, overwhelmingly positive game, but you're right.
Yep.
That is the one. There's those few plays, especially that first drive, right? Like a first drive like that against a quality opponent can be the difference between a win or a loss, right?
Right.
To march down there. So uh, the other thing I was thinking about is not, unfortunately for our special teams folks, they didn't get a lot of action. When
No.
you score touchdowns all the time and don't punt till the fourth quarter. So sorry, special teams, we might not be able to give you a game ball for a while,
Yeah.
which is a good
And
thing.
no field goals either because we're
As I
we're
said, no
scoring we're
field goal,
scoring touchdowns.
right? Touchdowns and not punting. So sorry,
Yeah.
special teams. I'm sure at some point it'll get there, but if this is the way we're gonna do it, that's fine with me.
Right. Right. They did have the one nice trick play on the punt return, so we'll give them a shout out for that. But
That
yeah,
is true.
otherwise it's been pretty boring in the special teams world last couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
just the way we like it. If this is the result,
That's right. So let's end on let's wrap it up with this. We
yeah.
talked about the crowd, the energy, electric atmosphere. Couldn't ask for much more on D days. Maybe a few more cheeks in the seats on that west side would be my only wish there. But
Mhm.
great environment from the parade to the tailgate to the in game atmosphere. Crowd was pretty engaged. Until the fourth quarter, obviously when the game's over. But
Mhm.
besides that, I give a shout out to Coyote Nation. And then I'm going to comment on this Yoke fans comment here, where he says in the post game press conference, Bob says that if the student section is full, he defers to the second half and kicks off into basically towards our student section to make the opponent deal with that crowd noise right away. And I
Mhm.
actually heard that comment too. And you think about from a coach's perspective, any little thing you can do to get an advantage, you should do it. So this is one of those where it's like, okay, it's genius, and to make them deal with that crowd noise right away, that first drive, um, whether it's you and I or whoever the opponent is, it doesn't matter. But that's actually a smart thing to do because you need to gain advantages wherever you can. So I like that. That's a good move.
Yeah, I think I tell folks that a lot. It's to your point, it's more fun to be an active fan. So and you can
Mhm.
impact the game, right? I mean,
Oh
that's a
yeah,
perfect example. Like you said, when you hear a head coach of a Division 1 football team saying, "Hey, as part of our game plan, we're going to kick it to an area of the field where the students and the crowd is the loudest." It's an impactful part of that game. So I'll piggyback off your comment. I think John Schimmel tweeted out something to the effect of, "Hey, this was fun, but every home game can be like this. There's no
right.
reason we can't have every home game like that." So uh, I would encourage everybody I know who's listening to this probably gets to the games pretty frequently, but continue to bring your friends. Let's make the last two home games. There we have a long time, unfortunately. Before we have another home game, just the
Right.
way the schedule works out, right? But there's no reason the last two home games can't be just like that. Be at the game, be impactful, and as these Yotes keep winning, it's only going to build more and more excitement, in my opinion. So I would certainly like to think that those next two games can be very similar atmosphere, and obviously Bob thinks it helps. So if that doesn't give you enough ammo when the AD and the head coach are saying, "Hey, you guys can impact the game," I don't know what will. So
Yeah, and really for as far as just a quick look forward, everything's in front of this team, right? We started off hot. We're rolling now. Um, you look at kind of just the upcoming schedule. There's a lot of big games, you know,
mhm.
to be played, especially with the three Dakota schools. So, Youngstown State, which we'll preview later this week, they're down this year. They lost a lot in the transfer portal. Indiana State at home, obviously, not going to be a good game, but one that Coyote Nation should show up for nonetheless. But a bunch of big games to be played. We now know too that the SDSU game is going to be broadcast at 6. It's a 6:30 p.m. game and it's on ESPNU.
Yes, they announced that today. Like you said, not to
Mm-hmm.
get too far ahead, and we can, obviously save this for later in the week as well. But yeah, that's exciting not only for us, but for FCS football in general. I think this will be the 3 weeks in a row where an FCS game's televised nationally, and we get to be a
Yep.
part of one of those. So that's exciting for everybody. Anytime USD gets to be on national TV, that's so awesome in my opinion.
Yep, and we can really we can wreck shop in the Missouri Valley. We're hanging strong at 4, but we really have a chance to make some statements. The rest of the way.
Hmm.
Even bigger than what we've done this point. So everything's still ahead of this team, one game at a time. But the ultimate prize is obviously Frisco, and this team has a quiet confidence about it. And that's probably my favorite thing about this team is the quiet confidence. They're not out there, showboating or being cocky and things that they're saying. And so it's just a quiet confidence, and they're a hungry group. So I'll leave it at that.
Agreed. They're fun to watch, and on to Youngstown,
That's
as
right.
I'm sure they would tell us.
All right, Coyote Nation, thank you for tuning in. Folks that commented, Yoke fan, he was in commenting. Thank you to him. Get everybody that's watched this on YouTube or will watch this here this week, and can't wait to do it again Thursday night as we preview the Youngstown State Penguins. All
Absolutely.
right,
And as always, go Yotes.
go Yotes.